Marley was dead. To begin with, the register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, the chief mourner, Scrooge. Scrooge signed it. And Scrooge's name was good upon anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know what is so particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to choose a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade. But the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, so allow me to repeat emphatically, old Marley was dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for, I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, sole administrator, sole mourner, and sole friend. Old Marley was dead, and this must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come from the story I am about to relate. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. Mattered very little to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as flint, secret, self-contained, solitary as an oyster. But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, edging his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance. Bah! Humbug. Once upon a time, of all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. Oh, it was cold, bleak, biting weather. The city clock had just gone 3. Fog came pouring in at every chink and keyhole. The door to Scrooge's office was kept open that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond was copying letters. Scrooge's fire was small, but the clerk, Bob Cratchit, his fire was so much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he dare not replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his office, And the second that Bob would go in with his shovel, the master would predict that they would soon need to part company. Whereat Bob would retreat back to his office, wrap himself up in his white comforter, and attempt to warm himself at the candle. And being a man of very little imagination, he failed. What's that noise? Could it be? A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you! Sorry. This is the voice of Scrooge's nephew, Fred. He really was the pleasantest spoken gentleman you've ever heard, with the most capital laugh. Let's see, it went something like, no, not quite it. It was, that's it. A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you! Bah! Humbug! Christmas, a humbug, Uncle! Well, you don't mean that, I'm sure. I do. Merry Christmas. What is Christmas time to you, Fred, but a time for paying bills without money, for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips would be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. Keep Christmas in your own way, nephew, and let me keep it in mine. And if I choose not to keep it, well, let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you. Much good has it ever done you. There are a great many things from which I may have derived good, by which I have not profited. I dare say Christmas among the rest. But I have always thought of Christmas time when it comes round as a good time. A kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. Well, the only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe it has done me good and will do me good, and I say God bless it. The clerk in the tiny cell beyond burst out into spontaneous applause, and immediately becoming aware of the impropriety, pretended to stoke the fire, and accidentally extinguished the last frail spark forever. Let me hear another sound from you, Cratchit, and you will keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir. I wonder you don't go into Parliament. Come, Uncle, don't be angry. Come and dine with us tomorrow. Bah, humbug. I am sorry. Sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party. But I made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I will keep my Christmas humor to the last. And so, a Merry Christmas, Uncle, and a Happy New Year! Fred left the office without another word, except to stop at the outer door and bestow glad tidings of the season upon the clerk, who returned them warmly. There's another idiot. My clerk, 15 shillings a week, a wife and a family, and he's talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam. Bob, having let Fred out, had let 2 more gentlemen in. They were portly, pleasant-looking gentlemen, and they now stood in Scrooge's office, hat in hand, bowing politely. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago this very night. Oh, well, we have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable to provide some provision for the poor and destitute who suffer greatly at this time of the year. Many thousands are in want of common necessities. Many hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir. Are there no prisons? And the union workhouses, are they still in operation? You see from what you just said, I was afraid something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I am glad to hear of it. Do not make merry myself at Christmas, and I certainly cannot afford to make idle peoples merry. I help to support the establishments I mentioned with my taxes. God knows they cost enough. Those who are badly off must go there, and if they are too proud, if they would rather die than go there, then they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. 'Tis not my business. 'Tis enough for a man to understand his own business and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Seeing that it was pointless to pursue their course, the gentlemen left without another word. Outside, the fog and darkness thickened. The cold became intense. Round the corner, some laborers had lighted a great fire in a brazier, round which a group of poor had gathered, warming their hands and blinking their eyes before the fire in rapture. One of their number, a small, ruddy-faced boy, made his way to Scrooge's door, knelt down at the keyhole to regale Scrooge with a Christmas carol. But at the first sound of, "God rest thee, merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay," Scrooge snatched up the ruler from his desk with such a fury that the young lad left the fog and the keyhole and disappeared into the darkness. At last, the hour to close up the shop arrived. Scrooge, ill-willed, descended from his stool and admitted the fact to the waiting clerk, who immediately blew out his candle and put on his hat. "You shall want the whole day tomorrow, I suppose." "If it's quite convenient, sir." "It is not convenient. It is not fair. Why, if I were to stop half a crown from your wages for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound. And yet, you do not think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work. Well, I suppose you must have the whole day, be here all the earlier the next morning." The clerk agreed that he would, and Scrooge left the office with a growl. Bob closed up the shop in a twinkling, wrapped himself up in his white comforter, and ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could pelt. As for Scrooge, well, Scrooge kept his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, he went home to bed. Scrooge lived in offices that had once belonged to his deceased partner, Jacob Marley. It was old enough now, and dreary enough, but nobody lived in it but Scrooge. The yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope with his hands. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing particular about the door knocker, other than the fact that it was very large. It is also a fact that Scrooge had as little about him what is called fancy as any man in the city of London. Then, Let any man tell me, if he can, how it was that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. Looking fixedly at the phenomenon, it was a knocker again. Now, to say that Scrooge was not startled, or that his blood had been conscious of a sensation that he had been a stranger to since infancy, would be untrue. But Scrooge put his hand on the key, turned it steadily, opened the door, and walked through. Scrooge closed the door. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. But Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He bolted the door, crossed the hall, walked up the stairs, slowly too, trimming his candle as he went. Sitting room, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa, nobody under my bed, nobody in my bedroom. Secure in the fact that he was now safe against surprise, Scrooge locked the door, double locked the door, which was not his custom, and then he got ready for bed. He put on his nightgown and his nightcap and sat down before the fire. Marley's face. Humbug. No sooner had the words passed his lips when Scrooge heard a strange sound coming from somewhere deep inside the bowels of the house. It sounded almost like someone dragging a chain across one of the casks of wine in the cellar. And then Scrooge remembered. He remembered having heard once that ghosts in haunted houses were said to carry chains. The sound grew louder, as if it were on the floors below, and then even louder, coming up the stairs, and then straight towards his room. It's humbug still. I won't believe it. His color changed, though, when it came straight through the door. It walked in right before Scrooge's eyes. And as it did, the flame in the fireplace leapt up as if to say, I know him! It's Marley's ghost! How now? What do you want with me? Much! Who? What are you? Ask me who I was. Who were you then? You're particular for a ghost. In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. You don't believe in me. Why do you doubt your senses? Because every little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheat. Why, you may be a bit of undigested beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than the grave about you, whatever you are. Humbug, I tell you. Humbug! The spirit then let loose with a frightful cry. Man of the worldly mind! Do you believe in me or not? I do. I must, but why do spirits walk the earth? And why do they come to me? It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death, to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me, and witness what it cannot share, what might have shared on earth and turned to happiness. I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was as full, as long, and heavy as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. Mark me. My spirit never walked past our counting house. In life, my spirit never roved past the narrow limits of our money-changing hole. And weary journeys lie before me. Oh, no space of regret can make amends for one life's opportunities misused. Yet such was I. Oh, such was I.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Mercy, charity, benevolence were all my business. At this time of the rolling year, I suffer most. Hear me, Ebenezer. My time is nearly gone. I have come here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. A chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path that I tread. Expect the first tomorrow night when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. And the third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more. And look that, for your own sake, you remember what has passed between us. The ghost disappeared from whence it came, and Scrooge crept to the door and made sure that it was still locked. And it was double locked, just as he had left it. Whether it was from the lateness of the hour, or the fatigues of the day, or his rather dull conversation with the ghost, Scrooge lay down upon his bed and fell asleep upon the instant. When he awoke, it was very dark. The chimes of a neighboring clock had just rung 12,
12? But it was past 2 when I went to bed. Oh, something is wrong with that clock. An icicle must have gotten to the works. Why, it isn't possible that I could have slept through a whole day and well into another night. Nor is it possible that something has happened to the sun and this is 12 at noon. 12. Was it a dream or not?
Scrooge resolved to stay awake until the hour. At last the sound broke upon his waiting ear. 1:15. 1:30. 1/4 to it. The hour itself. And nothing else. Just then, the room was filled with a blinding light, and Scrooge found himself standing face to face with the first spirit that Marley had warned him of. It was a very strange apparition, like a child, and yet not so much like a child as an old man, for its hair was long and white, but its face was smooth and didn't have a wrinkle in it. But the strangest thing about this spirit was the crown it wore upon its head, for it emitted a bright, blinding light, so bright that Scrooge had to squint his eyes to look at it. "Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me? What are you?" "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" "No, your past." "What manner of business brings you here?" "Your welfare." Scrooge thanked the spirit, but in his head he couldn't help but think that a night of unbroken rest might be more conducive to that end. The spirit must have heard what he was thinking, because it answered him. "Your reclamation, then. Take heed. Rise and walk with me." As soon as the Scrooge took the spirit's hand, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished. Not a vestige of it was to be seen. The darkness and the mist had vanished with it, for it was a cold, clear winter day with snow upon the ground. My heavens, I know this place. I was a boy here. Your lip is trembling. And what is that upon your cheek? Nothing, spirit. It's a pimple. Lead on, spirit, lead on. Do you know the way? Know it. I can walk it blindfolded. And so he did. As Scrooge and the spirit walked on, Scrooge knew every gate and tree. And as they passed into the little market town, Scrooge recognized many of the villagers and called them out by name. "Hello, Tommy! It's me, Ebenezer! Hello!" These are but shadows of things that have been. They have no consciousness of us. The school is not quite deserted. Do you see? A solitary boy, neglected by his friends, is left there still. Scrooge said he knew it, and he choked back a tear in anticipation of what they were about to see. Scrooge and the spirit walked in, and at the end of a great hall, mostly empty, there was a fire, and sitting next to the fire, Scrooge recognized his younger self, sitting and reading a book alone.
Poor boy. I was left here many a Christmas, while the other boys went home to spend Christmas with their families. I wish, but it's too late now. What is it? Nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should have liked to have given him something. That's all. Ah, let us see another Christmas. With a wave of his hand, the scene changed again. Plaster peeled from the walls. The room grew darker and dirtier. And Scrooge's younger self grew larger. The spirit motioned towards the door. And when it opened, a young girl appeared, much younger than the boy, but she ran straight towards him, hugged him and kissed him and called him, "Dear, dear brother! I have come to bring you home, dear brother, home for good and for all. Father is so much kinder than he used to be that he spoke to me so gently one good night, I wasn't afraid to ask him once more if you might come home, and he said, yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to fetch you. We are to be home all the Christmas time together and have the most wonderful time in the world." In her childish eagerness, she began to drag him by the arm towards the door, and Scrooge, nothing loath to go, went with her. Always a delicate creature, whom a breath might have withered. She died a woman, I think, and had children. No, one child. Your nephew. Yes. Let us go on. No sooner had they left the school, they found themselves in a busy city street. Here it was Christmas too, for the storefronts were all lit up. The spirit stopped outside one particular place and pointed to it. "Do you know this place?" "Know it? Of course I know it. This is old Fezziwig's. I was apprenticed here." Scrooge and the spirit went inside. And at the sight of a older gentleman in a Welsh wig, Scrooge pointed excitedly and exclaimed, "There he is! It's old Fezziwig! It's Fezziwig, alive again!" Old Fezziwig put down his pen and looked up at the clock, which was pointing to the hour of 7. He stood up, brushed himself off, laughed himself all over, and yelled out in his smooth, wonderful, jovial voice, "Yo-ho, Ebenezer!" Scrooge's younger self came into the room, now a young man. "Hilly-ho, Ebenezer! No more work tonight! It's Christmas, Ebenezer! Let's have this room cleared before a man can say Jack Robinson." Scrooge went to work. They cleared it all away. In a flash, the room was brushed up, swept, lamps were lighted, and it was as bright and wonderful a ballroom as one would like to see on a winter's night. And in came the guests. In came the fiddler with his arms full of sheet music. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one bright, substantial smile. In came the 3 little Miss Fezziwigs, followed by the suitors whose hearts they had broken. And they all came, one after another. Every man and woman in the city, anyhow, any way. And there was dancing, and there was music, and there were games, and there was food. Oh, the food! There were cakes and roasted meats, and there was beer, and there was fun,
and laughter, and above all else there was love. During the whole of this, Scrooge acted like a man out of his wits. He corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything, and underwent the strangest agitation. It was not until now that he remembered the ghost and became conscious of it looking full upon him. A silly matter to make these people so full of gratitude. Your old master has spent very little of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise? Oh, it isn't that, Spirit. It isn't that. Why, he has the power to make our work a pleasure or a toil, light or burdensome. To say that it lies in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up, what then? Now, the happiness he gives is quite as great as if it had cost a fortune. Funny. I wish I could say a word or two to my clerk just now. My time grows short. Quick, I have one last Christmas to show you. The scene changed once again, and Scrooge saw himself sitting on a park bench. He was older now, a man in his prime, and yet his face had already started to crease with worry and avarice. He wasn't alone, but sitting next to a beautiful young girl with tears in her eyes. Tears that reflected light from the ghost of Christmas past. It matters little to you. Very little. Another idol has displaced me. And if that idol can cheer and comfort you in the years to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve. What idol could displace you? A golden one. Our contract is an old one. When it was made, we were both poor and content to be so. But can even I believe that if you were free today, tomorrow, that you would choose a dowerless girl? You, who weigh everything by gain. No. And so I can release you. With a full heart and love for him that you once were. You may have pain in this, a very brief time. But then you will dismiss it as a dream from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen. She then turned and walked away without looking back. And soon Scrooge and the Spirit found themselves alone. Conduct me home. Show me no more. Why do you delight to torture me? I told you. These are but shadows of things that have been. They are what they are. Do not blame me. Show me no more. Conduct me home. Haunt me no longer! Scrooge was aware of being very tired. He was also aware that he was back in his own room and that the Spirit was gone. He was exhausted, made his way to his chair before the fire, and in a moment he was once again in a deep sleep. Waking in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, Scrooge had little occasion to be told that the hour was once again upon the stroke of 1. I don't mind calling on you to believe that he was ready for a wide array of strange appearances, and nothing between a baby and a rhinoceros would have astonished him very much. But when the hour came and went, and no apparition appeared, Scrooge was overtaken with a violent fit of trembling. Suddenly, the room was filled once more with a blinding light, and when Scrooge regained his senses, the room was transformed. It was still his house, to be sure, but now it was filled with mistletoe, holly, and ivy, and sitting amongst all of this greenery, atop a sort of throne, was a jolly giant of a man, dressed in a green robe lined with white fur. "Come, come and know me better, man. Look upon me. You have never seen the likes of me before. Have you never walked forth with any of my brothers and sisters in these latter years?"
I don't think I have, Spirit. I am rather sure I have not. Have you many brothers and sisters?
"More than 1,800.
A tremendous family to provide for. Spirit, I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learned a lesson which is working still. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it."
"Prophet! Touch my robe."
Scrooge did as he was commanded, and held fast.
They appeared on a city street on Christmas morning. Soon the steeples called all good people to church and chapel, and away they came in their best clothes and their gayest faces. And at the same time there emerged from by-streets innumerable people. The sight of these poor revelers interested the Spirit very much, for he sprinkled incense on them from his torch. And it was a very uncommon kind of torch. For once or twice, when there were angry words between some people who had jostled each other on the streets, he had but to wave his torch, and with a hearty "Yah!" their good humor was restored directly. For they said it was a shame to quarrel upon Christmas Day. And so it was. God love it, so it was. Scrooge and the Spirit traveled on to Camden Town, invisible. Soon they found themselves in the home of Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk. It was a humble abode, well kept, but quite small, Scrooge thought, for a family of any size. In came Mrs. Cratchit, dressed poorly in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons. She was accompanied by Belinda, her second daughter, also brave in ribbons. And Master Peter Cratchit sat in the corner plunging a fork into a saucepan of potatoes. Soon they were joined by two smaller Cratchits, boy and girl. They darted about the room, screaming of how they had just come from the baker's shop, where they had smelled their goose and known it for their own, basking in luxurious thoughts of sage and onion.
"Now then, what has got your precious father so? And your brother Tiny Tim? And Martha, she weren't as late as this last Christmas by half an hour."
"Here's Martha, Mother," said Martha as she came through the door.
"I'm so sorry I'm late.
But we had quite a deal of work last night and had to clear it all away this morning, Mother. Hide, Martha, hide, said the two little Cratchits, who were everywhere at once. Here's Father coming. So Martha hid behind the door. And in came little Bob, carrying Tiny Tim, the youngest of the Cratchits. Alas for poor Tim. He carried a small crutch, and his limbs were supported by an iron frame. Now then, where's our Martha? Not coming. Not coming? Not coming upon Christmas Day? Martha hated to see her father disappointed, if it were only a joke, so she came out prematurely from her hiding spot and rushed into his arms. The children helped Tiny Tim out to the wash house so that he could hear the pudding singing in the copper. And how was little Tim in church today? Oh, as good as gold and better. You know, he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much. He thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me, coming home, that he hoped people saw him in the church, because he is a cripple, and it might be pleasant for them to remember upon Christmas Day who it was who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. The children came back in, and they helped Tim to his little stool next to his father's side. Bob held Tim's withered little hand in his own, and he held it tight, as if he were afraid that somebody might try and take him from him. Soon Peter returned from the baker's shop with the Christmas goose. Oh, you've never seen such a fuss. According to the Cratchits, it was a feathered phenomenon. But Scrooge couldn't help thinking that it was a rather small bird, a very meager meal to feed a family of this size. Why on earth should they be thankful for that? Merry Christmas, my dears. God bless us. The family echoed the sentiment. God bless us, everyone, said Tiny Tim at the last. Spirit, tell me, will Tiny Tim live? I see a vacant stool in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. No, no, kind spirit, say he will be spared. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race will find him here. But what of it? If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Oh man, if man you be in heart and not adamant, forbear that wicked cant, until you discover what the surplus is, and where it is. Shall you decide what men shall live, and what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven, you are less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. Decrease the surplus population. Oh God, to hear the insect on the leaf condemning his hungry brothers in the dust. Scrooge bowed his head before the spirit's rebuke, and he did not raise his eyes again until he heard his name. Mr. Scrooge, I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. Ah, the founder of the feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and hope he had a good appetite for it. Should be Christmas Day, I'm sure, on which one would drink the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. Everybody knows that, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you, poor fellow. I'll drink to his health for your sakes and the day's. A long life to him, a Merry Christmas. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt. Mr. Scrooge. The children all drank the toast after her. But it was the first part of their proceedings that had no merriment in it. The mention of Scrooge's name had cast a shadow on the party. But when Mrs. Cratchit went out to the wash-house and brought in the pudding, I can assure you that the merriment was restored. There was nothing of high mark in any of this. They were not a handsome family. Their clothes were not rich. Their shoes far from waterproof. But they were grateful, happy, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded from view, Scrooge kept his eye upon them, and especially on little Tim, until the last. By now, it was getting dark and snowing heavily. And as Scrooge and the spirit walked on, the light from fires in kitchens and parlor rooms and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. It was quite a surprise to Scrooge then to find himself standing in the sitting room of his nephew Fred. He said Christmas was a humbug. Seriously, if you happen to know anyone so blessed in a laugh as Scrooge's nephew, please introduce me to them. I too would like to make their acquaintance. Christmas, a humbug. Oh, he believed it too. The more shame for him, Fred, said Scrooge's niece. She was lovely, exceedingly lovely, with a sort of surprised-looking, dimpled, capital face. Shame, shame, and more shame. Oh, he's a comical old fellow, that's the truth. Not so pleasant as he might be, but his offenses carry their own punishment, so I have nothing to say against him. He may be rich, but what of that? His wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't do any good with it. He doesn't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he is ever going to benefit us with it. Oh, I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself. Always. Here. He takes it in his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? The consequence is he loses some pleasant moments, which could do him no harm. I am sure that he loses pleasanter companions than he can find in his mouldy old office or dusty chambers. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not. He may rail at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it if he finds me going there in good temper year after year and saying, "Uncle Scrooge, how are you?" If it only puts him in the mind to leave his poor clerk £50, that's something. And I think I shook him yesterday. It was now his guest's turn to laugh at the thought of Fred having any effect on Scrooge. But being such a thoroughly good-natured fellow, he let them laugh. He didn't mind that they were laughing at him, so long as they laughed at any rate. And he encouraged their merriment by passing around a bottle. He has given us plenty of merriment, I am sure. And it would be ungrateful not to drink to his health. Here's a glass of mulled wine ready, and I say, Uncle Scrooge, a long life to him, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year to the old man. He wouldn't take it from me, but may he have it, nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge. In this moment, Scrooge couldn't help noticing something familiar about his nephew's face, something that he had never quite noticed before. It was a sort of glint in his eyes, a glint that reminded him of a young girl who came to collect him from boarding schools many, many years ago. Scrooge felt compelled to call out to his nephew, "Fred!" But it was too late. The scene was already fading from view. Scrooge and the spirit walked on. They visited many homes, always with a happy outcome. The spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were comforted. By foreign lands, and they were close to home. But wherever Scrooge and the spirit went, the spirit left his blessings and taught Scrooge his precepts. It was a long day, if it were only a day. Scrooge had his misgivings, for while he remained the same, the spirit grew visibly older, his hair growing long and white. "Are spirits' lives so short?" "My time upon this globe is very brief. It ends tonight. Tonight at midnight. Hark, the hour grows near. But before I go, there is one last thing I must show you. Oh man, look. Look down here." The spirit spread forth his robes and revealed 2 children clinging to his garments. They were wretched looking, starving, their skin gray, their eyes black, and Scrooge was terrified to look at them. No. Look down here. They are man's, and they cling to me, pleading from their fathers. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both. But beware this boy most of all, for upon his brow I see that written which is doom. Have they no refuge or recourse? Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled 12. Scrooge realized he was alone. But then he saw it coming towards him. It was cloaked, all in black, and hooded. It glided upon the ground, and as it came, it spread misery and death in its wake.
Am I in the presence of the spirit of Christmas yet to come? You are about to show me things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that not so? Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, I am willing to bear your company and to do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? Very well, Spirit. Lead on. In the next moment, the city sprung up all around them, and Scrooge found himself standing in the business district of London, a part of town that he knew very well. The spirit stopped beside a group of men and pointed towards them. As Scrooge approached, he realized that he knew these men. They were wealthy, important men of business.
No, I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead.
Oh, when did he die?
Last night, I believe.
What was the matter with him?
God knows.
What has he done with his money?
Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life, I don't know anyone who would go to it. What do you say? We make up a party and volunteer. I don't mind going, if a lunch is provided.
The men cackled as they strolled away. Scrooge and the spirit walked on, and soon found themselves in an entirely different part of town. A part of town that Scrooge would never venture into, although he recognized its condition and ill repute. They came upon a junk shop filled with all sorts of grotesque oddities, including its proprietor, a scraggly-looking man, nearly 70 years of age, who sat at one corner of the shop smoking his pipe. Scrooge and the spirit came upon this gentleman just as an older lady entered the shop. Scrooge recognized her. It was Mrs. Dilber, a laundress who did some of his cleaning from time to time.
Oh, hello, old Joe. I've brought you some real pretties today,
she said, dropping a bundle at his feet.
Oh, Mrs. Dilber, I thought I'd see you in here when I heard old Scratch had died. Helped yourself to a few of his things, have we? Well, why not? We all have a right to take care of ourselves. He always did.
No man more so. And who's the loss for a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose. Besides, if he wanted to keep 'em after he was dead, the wicked old screw, why wasn't he more natural in his lifetime, instead of lying there, gasping out his breath, alone? Go on, open that bundle, Joe, and show me the value of it.
Right, let's see. We got sheets, towels, a pencil case, a few sleeve buttons. What do you call these? His bed curtains? You don't mean to say you took 'em down with him a-lying there, do you?
Well, why not? He's not likely to take cold without 'em, I dare say. Now, you may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it. It was the best he had, and a fine one too. Somebody would have wasted it if it hadn't have been for me.
Or what do you call wasting it?
Well, putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Somebody was fool enough to put it on him, but I took it off again.
You were born to make your fortune, you were.
This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead.
Spirit, I see, I see. The case of this unhappy man deceased might very well be my own. My life tends that way now. Spirit, please, I implore you, can't you show me some tenderness connected with the death? There must be some compassion in this city, surely.
Scrooge then found himself standing once again in the home of his clerk, Bob Cratchit. At first he was relieved to find himself in this place of merriment. But then he realized that the mood had quite changed. The once noisy Cratchits sat still and quiet as statues. Peter Cratchit was reading from the Bible, and he brought in a young child and set him down amongst them. The mother, who was working on a bit of sewing, set aside her work and put her hands to her face. The color hurts my eyes, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he gets home for all the world. It should be near his time, past it rather. But he has walked home slower these past few evenings. I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulders very fast indeed. But he was so light to carry, and your father loved him so that it was no trouble. No trouble. Here's your father now. And in came little Bob. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who could help him to it the most. And when he was settled, the youngest Cratchits crawled up onto his knees, each laying a tiny cheek upon his, as if to say, "Don't mind it, Father. Don't be grieved." "You went then today, Robert?" "Yes." "Oh, I wish you could see how green a place it is. But you will. You will. I told him that we would all walk there together on a Sunday. A little child. A little child. I ran into Scrooge's nephew, Fred, today. He is the kindest spoken gentleman you have ever heard. I saw him in the street, and he noticed that I looked a bit down, and he asked what had happened to cause me such distress. I told him about our Tim, and he said, "I am heartily sorry for it, and I am heartily sorry for your good wife." And by the by, how he ever knew that, I'll never know. Knew what, my dear? Why, that you are a good wife. "Everybody knows that," said Peter. "Very well said, my boy. I hope they do." "Heartily sorry for it," he said, given me his card. "That is where I live.
If you should need anything, you come and see me. No, it wasn't for what he can do for us so much as just his kind way that moved me so, but you mark what I say. I shouldn't be a bit surprised if he didn't get our Peter here a better situation. And then Peter will be keeping company with somebody and setting up for himself, said Belinda. It's just as likely as not. It's just as likely as not. Someday. But there's plenty of time for that, my dears. But however, and whenever we part from one another, I know that we will never forget our poor tiny Tim, or this first parting that there was among us. And I know that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, even though he was a little child, that none of us will quarrel so easily amongst ourselves and forget our poor tiny Tim in doing so, shall we? Never, Father. I'm very happy. I am very happy. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God. Spirit, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. But first you must tell me, am I the man whose death caused others such happiness? The Spirit conducted Scrooge as before, this time to a churchyard, and he pointed one long bony finger down to a single solitary grave. Spirit, before I read the name on that stone, tell me, are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they the shadows of the things that may be only? The course of men's lives foreshadow certain ends, which, if persevered in, they must lead. But if the courses be altered, the ends will change. Say it is thus with which you show me. All right. All right. Ebenezer Scrooge. No, Spirit! I am not the man I was! I will not be the man that I have been! Why show me all of this if I am past all hope? I will cherish Christmas in my heart, and I will keep it all the year. Spirit! Tell me that I may yet sponge away the writing on this stone! I'm back in my own room. The bed is my own. The curtains are my own. And best and happiest of all, the time before me is my own to make amends. I will. Yes, I will. I will honor the past, the present, and the future! I will honor all three, and they shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley. Jacob Marley and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it upon my knees, Jacob, upon my knees. The shadows of the future will be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. I don't know what to do. I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all the world! It's all right. It's all true. It's all happened. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what day it is! Here, Scrooge ran to the window and opened it wide. Oh, sweet, fresh air, heavenly sky, sweet, merry bells, glorious, glorious! There was a young man who came passing by. Hello! Hello there, young man. Can you tell me what day it is? Today? Why, Christmas Day? It's Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day! I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. Well, of course they can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my buck. Do you know the poulterers at the next corner? Do you know if they have the prize turkey still hanging there? Now, not the little prize turkey, but the big one. Oh, the one as big as me? An intelligent boy. A remarkable boy. It is a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck. Well, it's hanging there now. He's? Well, go and buy it. What? Are you daft? No, I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and bring the man back here that I may tell him where to take it. You come back, and I'll bring you a shilling. Come back in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you £50. The boy was off like a shot, and Scrooge, dressed in all of his finest, and he was downstairs just in time to meet the poulterer. Oh, would you look at that? I'll send it to Bob Cratchit. He shan't know who sent it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Scrooge giggled like a schoolgirl the entire time as he was paying the poulterer and sending him off in a cab towards Camden Town. Scrooge, not knowing quite what to do next, went for a walk. He had not gone far when he recognized a familiar face coming towards him on the sidewalk. It was the portly gentleman who was in his office the day before, the one who said, "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe." It panged Scrooge's heart to think what this gentleman would feel when he saw Scrooge on the street. But he saw the path that was laying before him, and he took it. "Hello, sir. Hello. I hope you were successful in your endeavors yesterday. It was very kind of you. Oh, and a Merry Christmas to you.
Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, that is my name, though I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to beg your pardon, and will you have the goodness to accept? Here Scrooge whispered in the man's ear.
Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?
Oh yes, not a farthing less. There are a great many back payments in it, I assure you. Just do me this one favor. Come and see me. Will you come and see me? The man said he would, and it was obvious that he meant it. Scrooge went to church, walked along the streets, patted children on the head, questioned beggars, and realized that everything could yield him pleasure. By that afternoon, his steps turned toward his nephew Fred's house. He must have walked up and down the sidewalk, past the gate a dozen times before finally working up his courage to go up and knock. And when he did, and Fred and his wife answered the door, I don't mind telling you that they were a bit surprised, and they looked a little frightened as well. Hello, Fred. It is I, Uncle Scrooge. I have come to Christmas dinner. If you will let me in. Let him in. It was a mercy Fred didn't shake his arm off. Nothing could be heartier. And it was a wonderful party, with wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. Oh, but he was early the next morning. Oh, yes, he was. The one thing that he had set his heart upon was if he could catch Bob coming in late. And he did it. Yes, he did. 9 o'clock, no Bob. 1:15, no Bob. When he finally arrived, Bob Cratchit was a full 18.5 minutes past his time. What do you mean, coming in here at this late hour of the morning? I am sorry, Mr. Scrooge. I am rather past my time. You are? Yes, you are. Now, let me tell you, my friend, I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. Therefore, I am about to raise your salary! Oh, no, please, sir, don't! Bob fell back. His hand touched the fire poker, and he had a mind to pick it up and try to bash Scrooge over the head with it and yell out for somebody on the court to bring a policeman and a straitjacket. A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas than I have given you in many a year. Yes, I will raise your salary, and I will endeavor to help you and your struggling family. And we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking, Bishop. But first, more coal. Yes, more coal before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he became a second father. He was as good a man, as good a friend, as good a master as the good old city ever knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. And let that truly be said of us, of all of us. And so, as
as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.